Just so you all know, this meeting is being recorded. We're going to get started here. I'm going to get the first group.
Slide 7. Slide 8. That was explanatory.
Oh, I switched it. Okay, on here it looks right. On there, and if I switch it, but I want to record it, so I'm not doing presentation mode, which is getting recorded. I'm assuming what's on here is getting recorded, not what's up there is being recorded. And so, what? So I want to record non-presentation. So that's why this one, I have it set to this. I'm assuming. We will find out, won't we? The people who are joining us. Okay, well, we'll get started. Okay, our first talk here is we're going to mute everybody. So if you're coming on, please mute yourself. Okay, I'm going to change this to, okay. So you guys want to come on over? You guys will introduce yourselves. I'll have you guys sit here. Oh, wait a second, now I lost my mouse. I lost where my mouse was, so couldn't see where it was. Okay, there we go. I'll put it like this, so you guys can see who's over here, so you can see what your guys are doing. And I'll edit out this stuff. There we go. Okay, so just leave yourself over here so they can see it, and then you just hit the dance bar, and okay. You can't use that mouse. You have to use this. It doesn't work for it, and then so you just hit this to advance your slides.
Which one again? Space?
The space bar.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh.
And the arrows go forward and back.
Okay.
And so you can see yourself on there.
Okay.
Okay. You didn't get started, whatever. Yep. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rafael Perez.
And my name is Pamela Collazo.
And our project, is the risk perception of the Maya train and project in Puerto Morelos.
So here's some background information that we have found so far. What is the Maya train? So the Maya train is a proposed railway that is gonna go through Yucatan Peninsula, Quintana Roo, and Campeche. It's about 1,500 miles, the road. And what is it for? This is a tricky question. Although anybody can take the train, it aims to attract more like tourism to the area. This because it will be expensive maybe, and it doesn't really stop on communities where the Maya dialect is predominant. So we think maybe it will be for the tourists.
And as far as construction process, roadwork did begin in Puerto Morelos, and I'll show you on the next slide, but it was put to a halt. And there's already a lawsuit. Locals began to complain. So right now it is at a halt, and especially because it never got officially approved. So this is a map of it. Let's see if I can't see the cursor, but in Cancun is where it will start. They try to start it at the airport, but the people that have all the taxis did not want it to start there because it would take away from them. And then this is a different map. The colors, I'm not too familiar with what exactly, what they mean by the colors, but the purple is Puerto Morelos, which is where we'll be at. And right there, they already began to dig and it came to a halt. Where it's pink, they also began to do construction there, which also came to a halt due to lawsuits. And the entire train won't do any. Yeah, Jessica. Let me see. No.
You can, if you click on it, you see
Okay.
how their name. Yeah, and then you can click on it to meet them.
Okay, thank you. So, where was I at? Okay, so right now the only place where we think the train will make a stop in an indigenous area is in Felipe Carrillo Puerto. Other than that, it's not expected to make any stops in indigenous places.
So we have three main research questions. The first one is we do want to know what are the perceived social impacts of the Maya Train project, that's MTP. And for that, we will be addressing the next topics: job opportunities, migration, unplanned growth, urbanization, gentrification, and unequal access to train. That's actually Philip's question. He will be working with that.
Okay, and the question I'll be focusing on is what are the perceived environmental impacts of the MTP in Puerto Morelos? Some of the topics we'll try to discuss out there will be water issues, deforestation, the impact on urban environments. Some of the examples right now, there's already been seaweed popping up in the oceans. So tourists have been going from the ocean, from there to the cenotes, and they've been contaminating it there through sunscreen, litter, sprays for bugs repellent. And we feel like once they add the train, that's only going to add to it.
And we also want to know what people think may happen with the infrastructure of Puerto Morelos if the train is built. So we will be looking at the capacity of Puerto Morelos and water supply and sanitation, solid waste management, and hotel capacity, and the urban planning.
All right, so we have a few methods. These are the main two methods. It'll be surveys and key interviews. Surveys, we'll be conducting surveys with residents. The survey consists of about 40 multiple choice questions. It could be less if they try to skip on some. So it'll be yes or no. If they choose no, they might skip a few questions. The surveys, we plan to start somewhere in Puerto Morelos on the beach side, since we expect that there will be more people outside, and then we'll shift it to the community. And we'll be doing the interviews there. We're gonna talk to Diego once we get there, and he'll give us an idea of where to start exactly.
Yeah, so with the surveys, we will know how many people think in a certain way, but we do wanna know why they think that way. So we will be doing key interviews to residents, business owners, city planners, staff, and so we can know why are they oppose or they support the project.
And with the interviews, as Diego mentioned, somewhere between 15 and 20 interviews. But once we get there again, we'll find out exactly. So other methods that we will be using is social media. So there's Facebook posts. They have Facebook groups of Puerto Morelos. We'll be probably looking at Twitter hashtags and see what we could find. Threads, yeah. News articles, picking up articles and see what information is there or if there's any information on it.
We also may be looking for capacity documents such as technical and policy documents, and field notes. We will be taking field notes on the, obviously on the field, right after the surveys or about what we overhear while we are there.
Yeah, and we'll also have recorders for the interviews, so we won't miss anything there, and then we'll just go back and.
So we can gather as much information for the paper.
Yeah. So some of the limitations, obviously, COVID has been an issue for the past year and a half, or year and something now. So we still feel that is going to be a limitation.
Since we will be talking with the people.
Yeah, so some may not want to talk. They won't feel safe. We have buttons that we made today that says that we're vaccinated, we're going to have masks, but. Yeah. Some may still not want to talk to us. Limited access to certain areas. Some places still may be closed due to COVID. But once we get there, we'll get an idea.
People who are not interested in cooperating, maybe they're just on vacation and they don't want to take surveys, maybe. And lack of knowledge about the Maya Train project, that's that may be a limitation because we don't want to be giving them information and being biased or something like that. So lack of knowledge may be.
So expected results, social impacts. This is Philippe's question, which we'll meet him out there. After surveying and collecting data, we think that the MT will have an impact on job opportunities in Puerto Morelos. However, it might have a negative impact on locals as it might cause gentrification between having to move from the beach side and move more into the residential areas.
For the infrastructure impacts, we think maybe after collecting and analyzing our data, we think we will find that locals are concerned about the capacity of the area not being enough. We may find that people with economic interest will not be concerned and will support the projects. So.
And for the environmental impacts, once we gather up the information as well, I believe that it'll show, I believe that residents will think that the MT will have a negative impact on the environment, while owners of hotels, restaurants will have a positive impact. That it won't have a negative impact on the environment. Sorry. And Mel, if you could help us out with this photo here. So.
Yeah, so.
You want, sorry.
Oh, no, this is good. So what this photo is this is some of the information that's coming about from the Maya train about where is it going to be located. So we have the different paths. So there's an overpass for the highway that goes from Cancun down to Tulum that goes right over the city of Puerto Morelos. Well, they need to tear that all out in order to put the train in, and so they have to divert all the freeway traffic through the city. And so these are different paths that they were proposing. Okay, so if you go to the next picture. So this is some of the construction that they're doing on those roads. So this is Dr. Leal Bautista's house, one of her homes that she owns. And they were digging right in front of her house, tearing up the thing in order to expand the road so that they could get 4 lanes of traffic through there. So there used to be palm trees there, and it was very pretty. Okay, next. And then this is just what they're doing, is they're just tearing it up so to make the curve a little bit more, the street wider right there.
Okay, thank you. And that's it, and the acknowledgements.
So we want to thank Ernie, Emily, Diego, Melissa, and all of you.
Kenneth, REU, the faculty, the teammates.
Yeah.
Because especially some of you will be helping us out there as well with surveys. We'll be helping each other out there. So I'd like to thank all of you. And that's it.
Any questions? Top of the screen, and you can hit the stop sharing. So the little red button, stop sharing. Okay, great. Now we can open it up for questions either inside the room or on online on Zoom. Okay. So if you have a question on Zoom, just unmute yourself or type it into the chat. So you guys can look at the chat features on the chat. You can also give congratulations, good jobs, all that kind of lovely stuff too. So congratulations. Yay. Okay. So any questions?
So far.
One of my questions was going to be, but you addressed it during your talk, which was great, was the question about people hearing about the Maya train. I mean, I've mentioned it to some of my friends and nobody has heard of this as a tourist, as an American tourist. So I was kind of wondering, what will you do with when you do run across American tourists that don't have any clue what's going on?
Yeah, so we are still thinking about that.
Okay. Yeah, same here. I've mentioned it to my friends and none of them know. They have no idea about it. So that's still something that we're still trying to discuss on how we're going to approach that.
But we will be like focusing on Puerto Morelos. So we think locals may know. There's not going to be like such, we're not going to be interviewing that much this.
Yeah. I mean, mostly the locals I know all know about it.
Yeah.
It's the American tourists and the other tourists who don't know about it.
Yeah.
But which is really cool for us for future projects too, is that if you guys are saying, oh, tourists have never heard about this, then we do this in 2 to 3 years. Now every tourist heard about it.
Yes.
We can compare your data. So that is great.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. Yeah, that's true. What was that again? Sorry.
Great project. Very questions were asking here. They're getting increased about the night.
Oh, yeah.
And how much they trust their information?
Yeah, so like some of the interview questions we'll be asking, I don't have the survey on me because it hasn't been published yet, but for example, some of the interview questions we'll be asking the locals is, do you believe there are any benefits to the construction of the Maya train as far as job opportunities, economic growth, environmental restoration, any social concerns, as far as gentrification, which we talked about, new job opportunities, water-related impacts, forest-related impacts, if they know anything about that, or stuff like that. And the survey I don't have on me, but some of the questions.
Yeah, some of the questions talk about where they have that information, where does it come from, and how much they trust that information. So we can maybe address how the information is going. But yeah, we don't think it's as transparent as it should be.
Yeah, and then at the end, we'll be able to see
General.
where they get their information from, whether it's just from a friend or whether it's from the news, whether it's trusted information. We'll be able to know that after we conduct all the interviews. And we're shooting for about 200. I think we're shooting for about 200 by the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
I'm hoping, I mean,
Yeah.
I bet some of you will all be doing, like you said, the surveys.
Yeah.
And you will be able to hand off to different groups and train them, and which is part of the goal of this whole REU, is to cross-training between different groups and learning different skills. So that's great.
Cool.
Any questions from online?
I didn't see it.
Okay, don't see any. Thank you both. Okay. Yay. Okay. So who wants to go next after that? Oh, okay, we got our next victims here. Here, let's. Okay. So we're gonna start our. Let me stop that presentation. So, but thank you all for being online today and joining us. We really appreciate that you could come today. So hold on one second. I'm going to switch presentations. Sorry, this is not totally perfectly seamless. Which one's yours guys'? That one? Okay. Go editing. Okay. Okay. So we have our next group. Share screen. Okay, and then we're gonna do this. Switch displays. Sorry, all the technical difficulties here. Okay, so next I'll let them introduce themselves. Okay, come on, guys.
Is it recording?
Yeah, it's still recording.
Okay, you wanna? Okay.
I'm gonna split them
I'll
up.
start it off, I
after.
guess. Okay. All right, so we can see each other.
You guys
You want
can
to
see
scoot in a little
yourselves in
bit?
the corner, right?
Yes.
Okay, there you guys go.
Yeah, is it recording?
Yep,
Yes.
it's recording and you guys are good. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Zendejas.
And I'm Stefano Munoz.
And today we're going to be discussing to what we did in this REU with how to assess water quality and quantifying UV filters and D in Cancun, Mexico. A little information. UV filters is another word for sunscreen. We're going to be using it interchangeably. D is bug spray. D is a type of chemical that bug spray has. Some bug sprays have. All right. Okay.
So today we're going to talk about the SPF concentrations and DEET levels in cenotes as well as in other water resources. As Eric mentioned, SPF is related to sunscreen and DEET is a insect repellent. And so we're talking about the UV filters in them and DEET and their ingredients applied to the skin, and if they are applied to the skin, how they are introduced to the water surface, and then how they are released and the concentration levels in them. So that's called a direct, input method. And then the other is called the indirect input method, which is, when you apply these chemicals and they drift off from other rare sources. So when we talk about DEET and sunscreen, not a lot of people think about the effects that it creates and the environmental consequences. But a little spray can go a long way, as we will find out later. And so the main chemicals that we are going to look at is titanium dioxide, and obviously the sun factors levels, which is 30, 50, 70, 100, and the D percentages in this case is 15, 40, and 100%. Oh, that's the next one. So other projects that we have going on is to assess the water quality of informal settlers in Puerto Morelos. And when we do that, we're going to analyze, collect these samples, and we're gonna sort of concentrate on finding whether we have E. coli, total organic carbon, and chlorine levels. When we do this, we're gonna use a machine called a spectrophotometer. We're gonna check for E. coli levels through a membrane filtration system, and the total organic carbon with the aquagenic system. And we're also going to be focusing on the levels of if cholera is present. We're also going to do a epidemiology study that focuses on the informal settlers of Puerto Morelos and Leona Vicario. So Puerto Morelos is considered a new settlement, and Leona Vicario is the old settlement. And we're going to see if there's a correlation between this water study. And then we're also going to do a survey that focuses on the seaweed sargassum and hydrogen sulfide exposure. So far for this experiment, what we know is that sunscreen and bug spray increases as tourists move from beaches to cenotes, because right now what's going on with sargassum is people are moving more inland to cenote activities or other activities around it. And so for this experiment, we had to figure out what was recommended application amount of sunscreen. So we figured out that the FDA is recommending 2 milligrams per centimeter squared being applied to your skin. And we'll give you an example on the next slide how much that is. Let me see. Okay, and then the D level recommended is 20 to 50%. And if you go higher in percentages, it's not as effective as if you stay between the 20 and 50%. And for the variables that we use for sunscreen is the drying time of 15 minutes and reapplying every 2 hours. What we don't know is how much sunscreen, and that's what we're trying to figure out, how much sunscreen and bug spray is being released to these cenotes. Also, we don't know is that the long-term effects and the recommended mass of DEET. So in this case, when we compare 2 milligrams, we don't know how much we should apply of DEET, and the recommended wait times for DEET as well.
Okay, so based on all that, our research question and hypothesis is, well, first off, we'll start off with the research question. So we're trying to see what is the concentration of these UV filters and DEET particles that leach into the water. So from that, we got our hypothesis, and in a more standard, when you're trying to write it out on your paper or a published paper, it would be the amount of UV filters and DEET particles in the simulation of hand washing will be the same for the on-site results in wells, cenotes, and other water sources found in local buildings. So that's to say what we did here at NIU, our little simulation that we'll explain in a few slides, is going to be the concentration of DEET and UV filters that we'll get back later are going to be the exact same once adjusted for proportion and volume. We use a much smaller volume than the amount that we found in los cenotes, and they'll be the exact same. So that is what we expect to find.
So the limitations on this study. So right now, where we have the sample size, we believe that our sample size is around 87 samples, and we're trying to see if we have enough time to create more samples down in Mexico, and then this will give you a bigger idea on how to see the comparisons and then when we're applying these samples, we figured that evaporation is part of this, and the spray mechanism as well. So when you spray it, we don't always get the same exact amount. We have ranges that dealt with between all the way to 100 milligrams. So you spray it, it's kind of difficult.
You click on the picture and then you hit it. Got it.
And then most of these products that we have are spray products, and it was hard for us to find out cream products. And then there might be a difference there in how our data presents itself. And then, yeah, when you apply the spray, it's kind of hard to measure 2 milligrams. So we had, in the next couple of slides, we'll show you what is or how much 2 milligrams looks like compared to the rest of the sprays that we had. And then we weren't able to find how much DEET was recommended in the measurement.
Yeah, to add on to that real quick, the DEET sprays, they just said apply all around. No numbers, nothing. It's like they're trying to hide something. So we're gonna try and see what that is. All right, so now let's talk about the design, because we had to make up our own design in 2-3 days. So it was quite the experience, but we managed to do it. So here we are to talk about it. Now, obviously we didn't create it out of nothing. We had an inspiration. So this was based on a different quantification study. That was based, it was a larger scale, but they were testing for, real quick. So inspiration on the left is the other study. Modification on the right is what we did. So starting off from the left side, the other study, they were testing the amount of sand that was transported from the bodies of the bathers. Let's say it gets on your hindquarters or your back or your arms, and then they were put into a small pool full of about 190 liters of water, so way more than what we did. But the ultimate goal of that was trying to find out how much of a bacteria called enterococci was in the sand. So now what we did is we had a modified version, but this time for sunscreen and DEET. So we were testing the amount of leached substances, both of those, that went into the water from the skin, applied in the hand. And these were gathered in small Ziploc bags and then transferred over to 250 milliliter bags to collect. And this was all to quantify the UV filters and the DEET in the water. So right now we're going to start with the wet group. And before I do that, I want to say that we did technically four groups. One was a blank. 7 were these things called spike tests, where we had the actual water, 250 milliliters, and we sprayed each type of sunscreen and DEET bug spray, I mean. So it was 30, 50, 70, 100 for the sunscreens, as well as the titanium dioxide one, so there's 5 there. And then the 15%, 40%, 100% of the DEET, so that's 3 there. So plus with the blank, that's 9 samples. And right now we'll give you the number of how many we did in the next slide, in the next few slides. But right now we had a wet and dry group. And in the wet group, right now, step by step, we had participants, volunteers, wash their hands, make sure they didn't touch anything before they had their the sunscreen and DEET applied. And what we did is we weighed and applied the 8 to 70 milligrams of sunscreen and bug spray. And you see there, sunscreen's labeled as L, bug spray is labeled as right. That's for the hand. So sunscreen, we made sure to be consistent and apply only to the left hand, and bug spray to the right. And then after that, we would weigh the residual weight to see how much was actually applied. And then that went for sunscreen and bug spray as well. We had our variables were 0, 15, and 30 minutes. And then the plus extra is what Gio mentioned earlier about the indirect input, when people wash their hands, like with their towels, or they dry themselves off. See how much will get into the water when they shower off. Gets into the wastewater. So the constant dry time, we made sure to give every single sample in this group 15 minutes dry time. So after they applied it, 15 minutes would pass by, and then we'd start with the procedure. So each bag had about 1.1 liters of water. This was to make sure we got our 4 samples, so 0, 15, 30, and the extra at the end. And also to account for any possible evaporation, any splashing when we're trying to collect the samples, and any water residue left on the hand. So now let's go on to the dry group. And by dry, what we mean is now our our dependent variable, what we're changing, is the amount of time we allow it to dry. Now, this is what we were talking about earlier about the typical 2-hour wait time, or not 2 hour, the 15-hour wait time that's recommended before you jump into a body of water. And also the 2 hours, so 120 minutes of wait time that people usually do before they have to reapply. So let's say you forget, we want to see what happens if you do forget to reapply, how much is actually leaching into the water. Now for 0, well, let's say your friends are waiting for you, you have to apply to make sure you don't get your sunburn, and you jump into the water. That's not recommended. So we wanted to see what happens in those special cases. And we also had an extra one just to be consistent with what we did in the wet group. What was constant here was the submergence time of 15 minutes. The procedure was the same, washing the hand, make sure they didn't touch anything, and they applied 8 to 70 milligrams for each substance on each hand. And we also got the same residue. But this time around, since we only had to submerge once, we only had the 600 milliliters of water. We didn't add a 1.1 liters since we're only collecting 2 samples per bag with this design. Okay, so this is what we use. These are the molds that we made to show our volunteers prior to having the sunscreen and DEET or the bug spray applied. This was based on us finding out that the FDA's recommendation was 2 milligrams per centimeter squared of skin. Now, if you see in the lower right-hand image of the mold, you see in the upper right-hand corner, the little 3x5 index card, there's 4 milligrams, 2 centimeters. They're really tiny squares. So if you've ever seen a 3x5 card, they're not that big to begin with. So that's twice the amount that the FDA recommends. That would be very, very difficult to quantify, especially with the spray. You see a banana boat brand right there, and we used copper tone. So similar, but very hard to quantify. So what we did is we made some molds, and later on we would be adjusting for proportion. So how this would go during the simulation would be, let's say I grab my partner's hand here, and then I say, okay, well, here's a square. It's about, since we got 32 milligrams, you're gonna apply this much. Okay, do you see? Great, now apply there, and then that's how it would go. And it'd be different. So let's say maybe it'd be about 80 milligrams, 90 milligrams. And in that extreme case, we would look at the hand, see, okay, here's a 71, and then after that, we would apply all around. We'd do that for 80, 90, and the rare cases when we get 100 milligrams. And here are our samples. This is what we came up with. This is the final product of our reference coding. So these were the different labels that we put on. And before this, it was crazy. We had different variations. It just goes to show that when coming up with a new, somewhat new method of collecting your samples and experimental design, there's a lot of work to be put in. So this is what I meant with, there's the spike test, the blank. So on the right side, you have 57 samples and then 30 samples on the left. And that was how much we came up with at the very end. So
if you see right here, the way we coded it was in the beginning, it was left, wet, and then time 0, and then S30, which is the sunscreen 30. And on the right would be right hand, wet, time 0, D15. So we tried to make sure that each of these had a sample of sunscreen and a sample of DEET in each hand. So one sunscreen on the left and DEET on the right. And then on the right side, you see the dry samples. So that's the way we coded everything like that and make sure each one had a group to it.
This is to make sure we were keeping track and when we were losing ourselves. And the only difference is, so since we didn't have 4 different bug sprays, we decided to pair the SPF 70 for the sunscreen with the titanium dioxide, just so we can see what would be leaching if we had a sample.
So overall, our expectations for the wet design is to have higher concentrations of SPF and DEET leach into the water. And with the wet design, we expect higher concentrations because of the prolonged submerged time. For the dry survey, we expect higher concentrations with higher SPF and DEET as well. And then we expect higher concentrations with a short, drier time. So the overall, I think we believe the same concentrations of UV filters and DEET is going to be the same in the cenotes and water bodies with the lab simulation that we did here. So here's our acknowledgements. We want to thank Dr. Shibata, Dr. Lazinski, Dr. I hate to butcher it, Bolsonger, and that's Dr. Ken, and Maya, Rosario, Pamela, Brian, all the REU cohort, the members, and NSF for the grants.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay.
Sharing. Yes, I do need to, that reminds me, I do need to give you guys all the NSF numbers. You should put NSF and then there's a specific number, EAR, and then our number. And so everything will have that on there. So don't let me forget. So you guys mentioning it was great. Thank you for restoring my memory for that. Is there any questions online?
Oh, yes. Are there any questions on the Zoom or in person? We'll be happy to answer.
In the field, what do you plan on doing then? While we're down in Mexico for, we're there for a month. Are you guys just going to be sitting around and putting sunblock on and seeing if you burn or not?
Trust me, by the time we were done in the lab, I was nauseated from the smell of sunscreen. I told myself, I'll handle the sunburn. I do not want to put on sunscreen after going through that. Because 87 samples and a lot of trial and error, it kind of got to me. So what we plan to do on the field is help for the most part.
Okay.
Our other fellow REU members, because we're not going to be, we already did the simulation. We're going to have someone else quantify the samples when we go down there. We're going to collect it, and when we're done with the other geochemical people and also the microplastics, we're going to be helping them while we also get our samples. We don't have to really do anything. We just have to collect and send.
Yeah. And
then we analyze after. But we'll be doing a lot of support.
Yeah, we'll be working on the other projects too. The informant settlers, collection of E. coli, chlorine, and organic compounds, and then the surveys for sargassum.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Do you know what methods that are going to be used to test for your titanium dioxide or for your sunscreen? Do you know about those, or is that something that I need to help get you guys up on? Those methods.
I think for the titanium dioxide, we sent that to the geological.
Yeah.
The actual methods, we're kind of still working on that.
So working on it? Okay.
Yeah,
I will work on that with you guys.
Yeah, the E. coli ones, we did mention the membrane filtration. That one's to quantify. We also mentioned the Aqua Gen X. That one's that one doesn't require incubation, so we want to see how accurate that is to the normal membrane filtration method. And also the collar one, that one's just presence. No presence. So it's something cool we do want to see because, the more methods, the better. The more methods, the better. So we can see what to apply.
Awesome. Other questions?
Any questions on the Zoom? Doesn't seem like it.
No. Okay, great. Great, guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next. Geophysics team, okay, go Geophysics here. Okay, let's get you guys up and ready. So thank you all for being here again who are online today. We really appreciate you coming and enjoying the talks. We appreciate the support you're giving to all the students here. This is not the presentation, so let me get the presentation. I'm assuming it's called Geophysics. That one. Correct assumption here. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Show this one. And then I'm going to start the presentation. Okay, let me switch displays. Okay, there you go. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and then we'll go from there. Lights in the front here. And you'll see yourself on the screen so you get yourself situated. Yeah, and then I'll take the whole thing and cut it by presentation.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us either here physically or on Zoom. My name is Rosario Cecilia Flores Eli, and
my name is Brian Olivieri Fernandez.
And we are part of the geophysics team working in collaboration with Dr. Phil Carpenter. And our research is going to focus on changes in water levels and new fractures near cenotes in Yucatan, Mexico. And so before we go into our research questions and hypothesis, we want to give you guys a background on the region down there in Yucatan. So some of the background is that in Yucatan, Yucatan Peninsula, the area is mainly made up of carbonate and soluble rocks, the majority of which are limestone. Yucatan Peninsula is known for its flat terrain. I didn't know it was flat until this week. I learned so much information in the span of a week. It's known for its flat terrain that stretches the length of the peninsula, which harbors many cenotes. And for those that don't know what cenotes are just flooded caves that occur naturally as a result from limestone bedrock collapsing into the area groundwater. So that water is the same water that tourists swim in. Is the same water that locals and people in that region use as potable water, drinking water. And cenotes are important ecological and economic hotspots down there in Yucatan and in Quintana Roo, although they are vulnerable to pollution.
Now that we know a little bit about the geology of a cenote, let's talk about where does that fresh water and salt water come from. When rain infiltrates through those porous surfaces on the rocks and goes down through fissures and conduits and form different layers of water and forms then a big, what we call a fresh water lens, which is a big pool of fresh water, much cooler and less denser than saline water. So it sits on top of it. And seawater introduces itself to the aquifers regardless of the rock or the soil. Doesn't matter if it's a carbonate soluble rock. And this freshwater lens varies on the region the sinkhole's located. So more inland will have a thicker freshwater lens because it has less saline water coming through it. And down there in Mexico, it could vary from 30 meters in thickness, the water lens. In some places closer to the coast, it will be much less because of the infiltration in saline water. Now, how does that water flow into the aquifers or the cenote? It passes through networks of systems guided by many forces. This main force being gravity. So gravity pushes water downwards to the aquifers or the cenotes. And there are other factors that can affect this process, like water tides, rainfall, and the higher the water level in the aquifer relative to the sea level, the greater the mass. So the more mass of water, more force. So that's how it works, the water flow. Now, for my research question, I want to search areas near the cenotes where water table levels change, if there's any decrease, if just why. This is based on the higher demand, the more tourists are going down there, so more water is being pumped out. And we want to see if that water lens has decreased over the years. And yeah, and if there's any changes in that interface. Also, we want to check out the structure of the cenotes, if they pose any safety hazards around that, if they're safe for development in that area. So we're gonna see that too. And my hypothesis is that it is gonna decrease with the demand of tourism, migration in the area, and the water table will decrease, affecting the fresh water, saltwater interface.
Okay. And so for my research question, I'm going to be looking more on the different conduits, which are just these holes that you find on the roads. Mainly, we're going to focus, we're highly interested in looking at, there's stretch that connects between La Ruta de Cenotes, which is a carretera or highway, and the highway called Playa del Carmen. So there's like just the road that connects those two highways, and we want to look if there's any contaminated sinkholes due to human activity, especially now that you see like an influx of tourists and locals, right, flooding these cenotes because of the sargassum problem that's happening on the coast by the beach. And one of the questions is, do any of those conduits or sinkholes have any contact with the water table in the region? And these are some photos that was taken from previous REUs. As you can see on the first photo, there is you see like the hole and there's garbage that has fallen into it. And we're wondering, has that like hole similar to that penetrated deep enough that it's making contact with the water that's used for, drinking? And has any of the debris penetrated to the cars, contaminating the fresh water in the area? So that's what I just said. My hypothesis, we think that we will find these many sinkholes like what you see right here, that some may have contact already with the water table. And again, it's due to the increase of tourism flooding these regions and these communities. And we might witness more garbage present around these areas, again, making possible contact with the water tables. And in order for us to gather this data, here are some of our methods.
Yeah, we're gonna use different equipments down there and different setups to get our readings. The first one we're gonna use is the simple 1D resistivity or the sounding. This method will give us results on the water table. It'll help us measure the freshwater saltwater interface. It'll give us our results in a graph. So it'll show us the meters, how deep it goes. Mm-hmm. We'll have the resistivity profile 2D, where it'll help us map out and give us a layout of the conduits, if there are any underground caves, and help us to see if there are any undiscovered sinkholes. Mm-hmm. And the azimuthal resistivity, that'll help us map out any fractures. So remember in the background, we mentioned how water flows through those fractures. So that method, it will help us map out those fractures. And the spontaneous potential will help us read the battle zone, which is like the topsoil, like the top layer, and the fractures too. That method uses a copper solution to make contact with the ground and map out an area. And there's like the equipment, similar equipment we'll use down there. So that connects to some probes and electrodes, and those go into the ground and give us the readings.
So our locations or areas of interest, like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the artery roads that lie between La Ruta de Cenotes and Playa del Carmen. There's so many cenotes that pretty sure people are flooding into them right now at this moment. And there are some wells that we have spotted so far earlier with Professor Carpenter, Dr. Carpenter. So this is like our area that we're probably going to be focusing. And we're going to be working along with the geochemistry team, especially on the looking at the sites that they're going to be investigating as well. Some of our limitations for our research, weather conditions, whether if it's too rainy or if there's thunderstorms that might pose a threat, like damage our equipment. We also have also limited equipment that we have down there. Dr. Carpenter mentioned in previous REUs there were other instruments that were used, but this year it's kind of limited with what we have. And also the limited time, right? We're gonna go down there and collect this data in the span of 4 weeks, or in our case, a week for each topic. and also limited access in the areas of interest. Some of them might be privatized, so the owners might not give us permission to survey in their area. So yeah, so those are some of our limitations and expected results.
Yeah, the expected results are similar to our hypothesis. We expect to see a decrease in the freshwater supply due to the high demand from locals and tourists. Also, when we compare the data from previous REUs, we expect to see like the significant change in it. Also, discover new fractures and cavities along the cenotes, because we're gonna look into different areas that are not haven't been recently searched. So we expect to find those new fractures and cavities, and see the link, find the correlation between those sinkholes and conduits with the water table, how they connect and form a system.
Okay, and these are our acknowledgements. Our mentor, Dr. Phil Carpenter, Mel and Ken for mentorship and leadership. The rest of the NIU faculty and staff at CC, who's going to be helping us down there in Mexico. And the rest of the REU students for their support, emotional support, and of course the NSF for funding our research. Thank you.
Any questions?
And any questions?
Okay, so I looked up the REU number. REU number is 1852290. So, just so you guys have that number from now on. Okay, so you can stop sharing. So if there's any questions, you get the red button right there. Hit that red button. Is there any questions from online? Check the chat right there, see if there's any questions.
Let's see. Oh, there you go.
So any questions?
Thank you.
No, I'm really excited about the geophysics. Are you guys gonna be near the well field too, and doing near the well field?
We were trying to look into to go into Chichen Loop. What's it called? Yeah.
Right. You know, so that's, yeah, so I was wondering if you were going to go to the well field at all. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Because that's one of my questions is like, if you're doing it from one year to the next year, we can see if it's changed.
Yeah.
So you have to go back to those exact same locations. Yes.
We have access to that. As far as like detecting like fractures or holes, and that's pretty much anywhere. So I'm going to be relying on a lot of the geochemistry team to see what sites they're going to visit, and I'll survey the area to see if we can swap our tools and our instruments to gather the data.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be working a lot with the geochemistry.
Geochemistry group. Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you, everyone.
So
You have a question in the chat.
question.
Oh, there is. Okay. If question is the water in the aquifers brackish or fresh?
So what does brackish means? Not fully salted, not like ocean water, and then fresh water onto it. So brackish water you usually find like in the mixing or near the thing. So no, we will be looking at fresh and then salt water. So there's not brackish.
So no, yeah, it's mainly fresh water.
Yeah, a little bit of brackish, but
yeah, maybe the closer you get to the shore, right?
yeah. When you get to the shore, you'll put some. So the geochemistry group will be looking for that. Usually we recommend brackish water of electrical conductivity of 1,500 microsiemens per centimeter. And so we'll be able to test the water for you guys to be able to tell the geochemistry group to be able to tell you guys if it's brackish, fresh, or salt.
Perfect.
So we'll be able to tell you guys.
Yeah.
So geochemistry, that's a question for geochemistry.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Okay. No,
We got you guys. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. Great.
Good
Okay.
job.
Yes, thank you guys for sticking with us. For everybody who's online, our next speaker. Yep, you're up, Brian. I mean, not Brian, Stuart. Stuart, I'm looking at Brian. Let's stop this presentation. Did you send it to my email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number two.
Number two. You want me to use this one, the number 2?
Yeah.
Okay, download. Save. Okay. Okay, our next speaker here. Thank you guys again for staying with us. And I'm going to share my screen. And our next talk will be done by Stuart here. Share. I'm going to start my presentation. Display settings, swap presentation mode. Okay, so you get to sit here. Thank you.
Go get him, Stuart.
You got this.
Hey, you got your cheering spot out there. Hey. You just hit the arrows and it'll go forward and back.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Stuart Anaya Limon. And my project is gonna be vulnerability mapping in the Yucatan Peninsula. My home institution is California State University, Bakersfield, which is like 2 hours away from Los Angeles. And I'm currently here at Northern Illinois University. Okay, so general background of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's an aquifer, and an aquifer is defined as any water-bearing rock. More specifically, we have a karst geography in the peninsula, which is formed by dissolution of soluble rock. So rocks like limestone, dolomite, but in the peninsula, it's mostly composed of limestone. We have characteristics such as porous and permeable to define an aquifer, and porous just means the ability for water to stay in the rock, in the bedrock. And permeability is the ease or the hydraulic conductivity of water flow in the bedrock. So the spaces in between. And over time, there's preferential pathways. So as water infiltrates, finds itself, preferential pathways and creates small scale fractures. And over time, small-scale fractures can lead to cenotes or sinkholes, which are fragile points on the karst geography that open up and karst water. Groundwater is left exposed. So background on my particular project, GIS, is GIS stands for Geographic Information System. It's actually system. This software incorporates data from like spatial location and data from water samples or water contaminants, and I have to incorporate that data into GIS and create maps. There's a difference between GPS and GIS. GPS is just global positioning satellites, so it's just spatial information, but it's useful. It's useful to create these maps on GIS, and it reveals deep insights, pattern relationships, and analysis. So this brings me closer to my point, vulnerability maps. Vulnerability means aquifers accessibility to contamination from human activity. I'll be referring to this term a lot in my presentation. So vulnerability maps, well, all kinds of maps. There's many different kinds of maps, but I'm gonna be mostly interested in heat and cluster maps. You know, heat maps uses point density analysis with bright colors to describe observation. So as you see in this picture, there's points, and there's also bright colors that tell a story. That's, you know, and we also I wanna include a legend or some kind of chart describing what the map is. And ultimately, these vulnerability maps just tell story, correlations, patterns. There's more of a certain contaminant in this cenote rather than this another. There's more of another contaminant in another particular cenote 5. So the method I will be using for vulnerability mapping is called EPIC. EPIC karst protective cover, infiltration condition, karst network development. These are just parameters. This method allows for determining groundwater protection area, and it takes account the most significant parameter, which are the 4 I just named. And table 1 describes the EPIC karst parameter, and this parameter it's related to karst network. It's just like how connected the geography is. You know, the more connected, the more infiltration, the more water flows through, and the more vulnerable to contaminants. And table 2 shows the protective cover. So protective cover is just like a layer of protection, and this layer is usually just soil. So how thick the soil is, if there's more soil thickness, then the karst aquifer is more protective. It's less vulnerable. Now less thickness of soil will indicate more vulnerability because it just infiltrates right through. Table 4 is the infiltration condition. So this characteristic just describes like the hydraulic gradients or slopes of the geography. You know, if we have a high elevation and it goes to a low elevation, then there's gonna probably be a lot of infiltration. The next one is the karst network development. It's kind of related to the first parameter. It's just how well connected, how well developed this karst geography is. Down in Yucatan, it's gonna be pretty developed, given the fact that there's like over 7,000 sinkholes in that peninsula. Yeah, a lot. And then once you have your characteristics, you want to assign a rubric, you know, a rubric of like 1, 3, 4, as described on table 6. A higher number will mean less. It will mean less vulnerable. Like, let's say for protective cover, I can spot a very thick layer of soil, so I'll just give it a 4. So once you have your rubric, you go down to table 7 and you weigh these factors. How important it is, you know, how significant the characteristics that I just labeled. So a 1 being not very significant and a 3 being pretty significant. This table, table 7, I got it from from a research paper on the karst geography in Switzerland. So that's what the author thought it was the significance of the parameters. 3, 1, 3, 2. That'll be different from my project. And once you get these numbers, there's an equation you have to plug it in. And this equation is the one illustrated above. Yeah, alpha times E, beta times the protective factor, gamma times infiltration. You get lowercase delta times personal. And so low protection factor values indicate high vulnerability, because if you think about it, so if protection covers, so let's say we pick, I would expect to pick a relatively low number for the karst geography and the Yucatan. So I'll probably give it like a 1 or 2, and then you multiply it times its significance. Yeah, other factors to take into consideration. High protection factor value indicates low vulnerability, and this table gives a range once you find out your protection factor. Low values equal to 19 is very high, and then low is anything higher than 25. So my next slide, this leads me to my next slide, which is hypothesis and research question. I guess I'll make sense of a start over my research question. And my research question is, what areas will display a higher vulnerability threat in relation to tourist and local activity? As we know, some cenotes are visited more frequently by tourists, and is frequently more visited by locals too. So we wanna see the vulnerability in that. And is there any correlation of high-low vulnerability with the distance between cenotes and heavy touristic area? Basically, how secluded this cenote is. You want to map out like a correlation pattern. And so my expected hypothesis is that cenotes visited by more locals and tourists will be more vulnerable to contamination, and then more secluded cenotes will be less vulnerable to contamination. So it's also important to know that it's a karst geography. Therefore, if cenotes are within relatively small distance, I expect similar levels of contamination and virtually all contaminants. So that means if two cenotes are within like a 10-mile radius, I'll expect similar levels of, let's say, nutrient pollutions, nutrient contaminants, and so forth, etc. So my objective is to determine and create fair, reasonable parameters for the cenote using the EPIC method, creating this rubric, and obtain accurate spatial information from GPS, obtain clear resounding images from GoPro, which is like a camera I'll be using. Make clear observation notes of important details surrounding the cenote. So I want to take note of the physical weathering if this cenote has been physically eroded. So that will lead me to believe that's an old cenote. So I want to take note of vegetation, geometry, how circular the cenote is, and turbidity of water. It's just how clear the water is. And so ultimately, my objective is to create vulnerability maps and tell stories with deep insights. So more specifically, these are my methods. So I plan to visit as many cenotes as I can both touristic and secluded ones, and utilize my tools in a safe and accurate manner. The GoPro, GPS device, selfie stick, mark waypoints from GPS, plenty of those. Detailed observations, creation of rubric, and incorporate this data into an ArcGIS Pro software, which will give me maps and clear legends and charts. So I'm going to talk about the relevance and significance of this project. So it's water contamination. So we and they, the locals, need to know. It's quite important. I'd like to know if my water is safe for me to drink. So it's important for government officials and policymakers to enforce better regulations to serve the drinking water, the groundwater. It's important to see detailed patterns and correlations that need to be addressed. And ultimately, water is a universal right. Everybody has a right to clean, accessible water. So it's also important for safe development of society, because we do not want to build a community in a fragile area susceptible to synoptic collapse. And this applies to all karst geographies across the world. There was an incident, I recall that there was a synoptic collapse in Settler, Florida, which is near Tampa, and it swallowed up a 35-year-old man while he slept. It's really tragic because it could have been prevented through this method. And that's the YouTube link. If I have time, I'll play it. But yeah, that's not supposed to be there. This little no solution sign or whatever. Anyways, some of the limitations I've encountered and expect to encounter is just my lack of knowledge of GIS software. I'm an engineering major. I have yet to take courses on this matter, and a rough week at NIU. It's a short period amount of time here, and the computer labs in the geology department were not open. We were always running up and down trying to get keys for me to start on this ArcGIS Pro software. And there was like a slight confusion. I was given access to ArcGIS Online, not ArcGIS Pro, and there's a difference. Another important limitation is that it's a somewhat flawed method. Epic, it's just the logistics of it. I'm not gonna be able to see the karst geology in one picture if it makes sense. This rubric that I'll be creating, it's subjective. I may rate a 3 on a certain parameter, whereas my partner Alex may rate it as a 4. So that's a limitation. And equipment failure. This past week, I've used the GoPro camera, and it tends to overheat and discharge very fast. Also, the GPS device, I'm a bit concerned if it will operate well in Mexico. The packaging did say it operates in North America, but sometimes Mexico gets included into North America, sometimes it doesn't. There's some confusion there, so hopefully it works. So I wanted to take the time to demonstrate how to overcome barrier and limitation. We all got to realize that science does not go as always as planned. There's always barriers. So like when I was not given access to ArcGIS Pro this first week, that was a barrier that I had to work around with. So what I did is just put in the extra work, take the time to research GIS, what it is, watch detailed videos, and just put in the time. Teamwork is a really good way to overcome barriers because one cannot obviously know everything. There might be an area where I know more knowledge and my partner will know less, and vice versa. And that's why we had to come together and be productive. And also the great faculty that are here to help. You shouldn't be afraid to ask questions, help, and don't give up. Just work around. You know, when there's a will, there's a way. So this comes to my last slide, is my expected results. So I expect to encounter more old cenotes, given the fact that this is a relatively old karst geography. I expect to be giving relatively low ratings on the parameters because it's a pretty interconnected geography with over 7,000 cenotes in the peninsula, and even lower in touristic and cenotes where touristic is more present. Lower in those areas than secluded ones. So, and then that also is followed by low protection factor values, if you remember that equation I gave earlier in this presentation. So I expect some pretty high vulnerability maps with certain contaminants more present than other contaminants. So this figure right here is a heat map. It's kind of what I want to create, but I won't have enough data, so my map would look like more points, and also this bright coloring to indicate where the contaminants more present. And also I want to create a map that looks like this. This map is from Switzerland. There's numbers, and those numbers are the protection factors, and higher protection factor values is less vulnerability, and lower protection factor values indicates more vulnerability. So I want to come up with something like this, but I will be limited because there's only a handful of cenotes that I can actually visit in the span of 1 month. So in comparison to this map, where there's got numbers all over the place, I will be creating like a smaller scale map, and just with protection factor values. And an acknowledgement of Melissa Linchowski, Jackie Cooney, Maja, Emily, Cam, and all my research partners, because they've all been really helpful in positive feedback and collaboration. And overall, NIU faculty who I did not mention earlier. So thank you to all of you. I'm excited.
Good job, Stuart.
So hit the stop sharing button right there. So is there any questions from people here or online or in the chat?
Let me see.
Is there any questions in the chat or anything? Hit the chat button. There we go. And then we can just see if there's any questions over there. Any questions? So.
Yeah, I do have some questions.
Oh, he's got some too. So let's do the live one here first. Gio?
Okay.
So you think, so the access of RGIS, like, I have an account.
I now have access to ArcGIS Pro through my home institution. I just didn't realize it until later in the week. But yeah, and this is where teamwork plays a crucial role. I'll probably be asking you for help, you know, because I have little knowledge to this GIS software.
I got all the documents.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any live question from
Now
the
the live,
audience?
okay, so the online chat ones?
So I had a question from Julia Luther. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Are cenotes more circular when they are older? For the rating limitation, have you considered having a third rater? Well, to answer the first part of the question, if a cenote is circular, that means it's pretty young, you know, because for a cenote to be older, there's gonna be physical weathering on the edges and less circular, you know, it's chewed up through erosion, through water, through rain. So I hope that answers the question.
And then instead of just having you and Alex numbers, maybe having 3 or 4 people do the rubric. Would that help?
Possibly that could possibly help, you know, and if a certain parameter gets more 3s, then we'll go with that. If a certain parameter gets more 2s, so yeah, I think that I'll consider it.
Yeah, that might be good because then we can get everybody to, so we can have you guys make up a rubric and then at each of the cenotes, and then what we could do is then have you guys score it and then have everybody else here in the room also use your rubric and see what kind of scores to see if it's robust or not. So you guys may be helping out Stuart on his project for that.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Okay, great. And then was there another question? Thank you. I see a thank you. Okay, yay. So yay. I said the yays. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Yay, excellent.
Great.
One thing with Stuart's project is as we're going around looking for your cenotes for you guys to do your geophysics, we got Stuart who can do all the mapping projects for you guys, you know, and know exactly where everything is in there. So I think that's one of the great things about this project is the interconnection between them. So I'm hoping that you guys are seeing the interconnection between all the different projects. And Alexis has decided she is going up next, which is wonderful. And then we have, let me close up this and let me find the next presentation. And thank you guys again for sticking around with us on our projects for today. Their next one is going to be on microplastics in the Yucatan Peninsula. So let me start this. Oh, let me skip this. Go back to Zoom. If you need a bio break, as anybody here, go ahead and stand up real quick. Everybody stand up, move on.